this is a blue hoodie. This is a blue background. This may not have been the best idea. But if I'm a floating head, now you know why. Okay, before we get started, first off, a big thank you to those of you over on Patreon to the positive response over the prototype breakdown video where we looked over the first part of the Just Bring It prototype. There will be many more now, considering that was a big success, more than I thought it would have been. We'll continue to look through all the different prototypes and beta builds of all different games, right through the PS2, PS1, GameCube, Xbox, and everything in between. If you want to check it out and you haven't already, head on over to patreon.com/ScottJay to get in on the action. Also, please note, if you are a Patreon or considering becoming one, I am currently taking testers for Smackdown vs. Raw 2007 and 2008's definitive editions. So have a read, see if it's for you, and message me if you're interested in testing. Forever Tired asks, when exactly will you begin working on the PSP WWE games next year? Okay, PSP content will start after the release of 2008's definitive edition on PS2, 360, and PS3. After that, we will do 06, 7, and 8 on PSP. Simultaneously, they'll probably all come out very close together. 99 The Punisher 99 asks, what are the chances to have AJ Styles, CM Punk, and Samoa Joe in SmackDown vs. Raw 2006's definitive edition? I need some new signings for TNA and Ring of Honor in my GM mode. Not great, unfortunately, but I can provide you with a great TNA Creator Wrestler save once I have fixed the Creator Wrestler bug. But there will be more TNA news very, very soon, probably around February or March of next year. So stay tuned for that. Aaron Nottingham asks, first off, thank you for your continued hard work and hope all is well. Thank you. As for my question, you previously mentioned in a previous Patreon exclusive update how you would like to expand the number of wrestlers that you can draft in GM mode for SmackDown vs. Raw 2006's definitive edition from 20 to about 25 or 30. Any updates as to if this is available to be done? If so, will you also raise the draft limits of definitive editions of 07 and 08? Best wishes and have a nice day. Thank you. You too. Yes, in the final update for 06, which will be the update which has Lesnar and Maven, the cap limit for GM mode is completely broken. So you can have as many superstars that are active drafted onto your subsequent rosters. This will also be the case for 07 and 08. Arturos Maglia, I'm sorry if I got that wrong. SmackDown vs. Raw 2006. When can we create some wrestlers? SmackDown, here comes the pain. Where can I find a save with the right movesets for the new wrestlers? It'll be in the it'll be with the definitive edition. Thank you for giving me lots of fun with the definitive editions. You're welcome. Not in the next update, but in the one after that, which contains Lesnar, Maven, the cap on GM mode broken, you'll also be able to create wrestlers. So yeah, final update, all the features will be working without bugs. Secondly, if you're having issues with a save, I suggest sending me a message. I'll direct you to where you can get a save. So yeah, there you go, bud. Bren 10 for SmackDown Shut Your Mouth. Can you swap Scott Hall for X-Pac in season mode so that Hall first appears with the NWO, Hall and Hogan and Nash, instead of being an active member of the roster from the start of the draft? That way X-Pac is available from the time of the draft. And Here Comes the Pain, can we get a late 2002 to 2003 alternate build that prioritizes the more up-to-date attires such as Hollywood Rock rather than the 2001-2002 model? Same goes for Kane, Jericho, Angle, etc. You can still have the classic attires, but in season mode cutscenes it would be the most recent versions. And in SmackDown vs. Raw and SmackDown vs. Raw 2006, I'm curious if you're able to tweak the 3D models at all to potentially add or remove things. For example, Mark Henry didn't wear knee pads in 2003-2004, but he had his newer style from the 2007 model, which did have knee pads. Would remolding or swapping out body parts be possible, or is it too difficult? It is possible, but the Mark Henry attire in 2006's definitive edition is based on what he wore in 2006. Okay, in the next version of SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, yes, Hall and X-Pac will be switched, so Hall will be appearing in those cutscenes. Secondly, for X-Pac, he won't just have the NWO attire, as I've previewed before, he has regular X-Pac attires as well, which will match for him throughout season mode. As far as 2002, 2003, Here Comes the Pain comes, I have said that yes, I will be releasing a more 2003-centric Here Comes the Pain, and a pure version of Here Comes the Pain as well in the near future, so not to worry. As far as your question with Mark Henry, His attires are accurate to the time, which is based around '06. If you mean for SmackDown vs. Raw for Here Comes the Pain, then yes, I will be doing an '03, '04 Mark Henry, around that Teddy Long era of Mark Henry. So yeah, there you go. Dominic asks, any update on the Raw 2 Definitive Edition? Yeah, mainly the delays are because of my house, right? My housing situation. That's kind of why Raw 2 has been delayed, because I'm having power issues due to the damage in the roof. So the quicker I get that fixed, the quicker I can get to capping footage and doing things, because obviously I can't do stuff on a PC for Raw 2. Everything has to be on a TV and on an actual Xbox. So yeah, so the second my place is sorted, we'll get to Raw 2 and it'll be really good, promise. Dweebust, as someone who has worked with Here Comes the Pain with modding the Definitive Edition for 10 years, I think it was that you previously mentioned, you're making me feel so old. It's 6-7 years, but still, I feel so old. What do you think it is about the game engine that gives it such good flow and fluidity in comparison to the rest of the series? I truly think that fluidity is something the series has been sorely lacking in every entry since Yes, Me Too, and this is a fantastic question. Also, an additional question that just crossed my mind, have you ever had any luck with finding the lost Hogan, well, the two Hogans, Warrior or Hardy models from early builds of the game? There is footage of them on the internet, barring Hollywood Hogan, but I didn't know if you had come so close to seeing them before. Okay, so as someone that used to wrestle, this is a big thing for me. Here Comes the Pain, while not as fluid in terms of its in and out animations as Smackdown Shut Your Mouth, the limb damage, submission system, and the amount of grapples did make up for that sort of loss of almost seamless transition. But yes, you're right, it still had enough of a fluidity that you could wrestle a match like an actual match. I mean, sure, modern games, maybe you can wrestle matches like they are now, but that's neither here nor there for me. I still think those earlier SmackDown games, you can really simulate wrestling. Before we go to stick controls and everything becomes these put a hold into a hold, and then or it's an ultimate. Everything's a gimmick basically. It's an ultimate control grapple. It's a spin the wheel submission. It's a this. It's that, and none of them work very well. And the targeting system's a mess. And especially the targeting system actually, because if you notice from about maybe '07, it starts to go all over the place. And then when it was something that worked flawlessly from SmackDown 1 to probably about 2006, maybe at the very least the first SmackDown vs. Raw. But yeah, after about 2008, once they shifted the controls entirely, the targeting system was all over the place, and that really kills your momentum, the fluidity of the gameplay. And you just can't wrestle like, say, a match on TV, or at least a match on TV between 98 and 2003 or 2004, which I kind of think is the peak of not only in-ring wrestling, but also in-ring storytelling. It amazes me when people will tell me The Rock or Mick Foley or someone like that wasn't a great wrestler. I'm like, no, what you're trying to say is they didn't do a lot of moves, and they didn't need to, because they understood how to wrestle and tell an actual story without it needing to have multiple callbacks to things nobody remembers. So yeah, they could really wrestle, and they were some of the best to ever do it. Now on to your second question. As I mentioned in the SmackDown Just Bring It beta video, which is on Patreon. I know you're a Patreon, so if you haven't, you did watch it, because you left me a really nice comment about that. So thank you so much. Yeah, I did mention that the Hogan Warrior Hogan build is almost guaranteed, and I'm just waiting to save to acquire that build. For more information, watch that video. I talk about it, and it looks like we have something which most definitely is probably the thing that is most likely to have Hardy if we're ever going to get him. So both are likely, both are very likely early next year. Hopefully by the time I get my hands on it, probably be about April, May of next year. So fingers crossed, and thank you for all your support. Elroy Hunt has 2 questions. Did you ever look into Yuke's Online Pro Wrestling, champion of the network, PS2? Just wondering if there was anything of interest on the disc or in the earlier builds of it. And number 2, what are your thoughts on the AEW video game being developed by Yuke's? I remember when Ukes first announced they were working on a game, they said that they were playing a lot of Here Comes the Pain, my favorite in the office that day. They've also got the No Mercy lead designer on board. Not much really, because I did, but there's not much there, to be honest. Like, I think because we have access to prototypes and betas of Smackdown Shut Your Mouth, there's more to pull from there and put that into the definitive edition, such as like moves from Just Bring It, moves from SmackDown 2, moves from SmackDown 1, whereas Online Pro Wrestling is basically takes a lot of SmackDown Shut Your Mouth stuff and uses it there. It doesn't really, there's not really much there, unfortunately. I think there probably would have been had we not had access to what we have access now, if that makes sense. As for Ukes doing AEW's video game, yes, I remember them talking about playing Here Comes the Pain a lot. But I kind of think that may have been because at the time when they tweeted that out, they may have still been in talks with WWE to do something, and maybe the 2K deal didn't necessarily allow them to do that, so those talks went cold. And I don't know how much or how little that has to do with AEW. I'd say this, I mean, obviously, gameplay, the creation suite, and not really much else, to be honest, because I'm not invested. So I think this is kind of why I held off how I would make, because I created a whole design video for the next 2K WWE game, and then when I watched it back, because as much as I thought this video was great, I kind of looked back and thought, yeah, but if I look at the content I'm using Austin, I'm using Rock, I'm using Mankind, I'm using Triple H, I'm using Kane, Undertaker, Angle, Jericho, blah, blah, blah. I'm basically using all legends, and I'm using legend arenas, because that's all I play with. I've never played with current guys. I don't, after about 2007, maybe 2008 now that I've modded it, but apart from that, like, I never touched the roster beyond that. It was like, no, thank you. You give me the Attitude Era or nothing, because it's just not for me. So, yeah, like, I'm not, I can't see myself buying and playing that game, and because for one, I don't think it's my kind of wrestling. So first of all, I think like the style of wrestling is totally different in AEW to, say, what I consider, WWF 98 to about 2004, 2005. So yeah, I mean, you've got the lead No Mercy designer. Yeah, they may have been playing Here Comes the Pain a lot. So again, it goes back to fluidity. As long as it's fluid, I hope it emulates the AEW style of wrestling, because if you're an AEW fan, that's the game you're gonna want, right? Like, I assume. I mean, at least that's what I think you'd want. This goes back to why I didn't put that video out of a design document, because I kind of felt bad, because I know a lot of people obviously would want me to, like, have, I guess, Roman Reigns or Drew McIntyre, and obviously, Sasha and Bailey and New Day and everyone else featured and stuff. And, I love those guys. I really do. And like, as I've said in my previous video, there's a lot to love about current day wrestling. Not the whole show, but there are plenty of angles that are good. But it's just I don't play as those characters, right? So I was making a video based around a wish list of things that, yes, I felt like the wrestling and as a whole you could implement for the main roster and the Legends roster. But I was kind of only using images and footage of Legends because that was what I wanted, right? I will encapsulate a game from like 98 to maybe about 03. So basically as long as Rock and Austin were there. And then I'm good. So yeah, that's kind of my falling with the AEW game. It's like, I hope it's good for those of you that want to buy it. I hope it's fluid. I hope the creation suite is great, because then that'll get more people. It will have more crossover audience and more crossover appeal, because there's a swath of people that still play and still buy the WWE games, and they're dissatisfied with it. So if this plays radically different and radically better and has a creation suite to boot, you'll see mass migration. So yeah, Oh, as long as you can share those creations. So make sure the online is good. However, this all does condense down into the biggest factor. What is the budget? Because if you don't have the budget, this stuff isn't really going to come to fruition. I don't care who's on the team. The budget dictates everything. Ethan asks, hey Scott, will Maven be in SmackDown vs. Raw 2005? And also, what can we expect from the SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 Definitive Edition? I was wondering, due to the PS2 version of the game having sound issues with crowd and commentary reacting to certain moves of all wrestlers, will they be fixed in the Definitive Edition? The Xbox 360 version always had the best crowd and commentary reactions to every match. Thanks again, Scott. Okay, as far as Maven goes, he won't be joining the cast of the original SmackDown vs. Raw, unfortunately. Okay, as far as Maven goes, unfortunately, he won't be joining the original cast of SmackDown vs. Raw. But there will be some really cool new additions, such as the official Brock Lesnar, official Rikishi, the official somebody else, which we'll find out later next year. And then new things like Foley and WrestleMania 20 Rock, not 21, he wasn't there. And then, yeah, so to your second question about SmackDown vs. Raw 2007, yes, the lighting, the crowd, and the commentary bugs will be fixed for the PS2 version, as well as having the correct renders that are not sort of weirdly shrunken high definition renders, but the proper standard definition renders similar to that of 2006. Flame Broiled Gimmick asks, main question I have is, has there been any breakthrough regarding the infamous Jeff Hardy Here Comes the Pain model? I know you probably get asked about this more than anything else, but some textures were discovered earlier this year that were far too low quality to do anything with. But earlier builds of Here Comes the Pain becoming available, I'm always hoping that one of them will include him. I also remember you mentioning obtaining or working with obtaining a build of WrestleMania 19 on the GameCube that might contain Jeff Hardy. I'm curious to see how that's coming along. As always, thank you for all the awesome work you do and sharing your work with us. Okay, just a quick clarification. I do have a WrestleMania 19 build with Jeff Hardy on it, and I do have a Raw 2 build with Jeff Hardy on it. The only one we're waiting on at the moment, which looks promising, is Here Comes the Pain. So hopefully that will be a real breakthrough if we get him. I mean, like I said in the Just Bring It beta video, Jason Vasquez asks, will we see ECW superstars and other superstars that debuted in 2006 like MVP in SmackDown vs. Raw 2007's Definitive Edition? Yes, the next episode of Rebuilding SmackDown 2007 is going to debut sometime in December, and soon after that I'll start showing off who is on the roster. But yes, you can expect loads of ECW guys and guys like MVP. Jeet Biswas has a couple of questions regarding SmackDown Here Comes the Pain Definitive Edition version 11. Number 1, can you add The Rock's 2002 Titantron, the SmackDown Shut Your Mouth one, so it goes good with the current Rock of Here Comes the Pain? Number 2, Big Show's late 2002 Survivor Series attire with long black jeans and tank top. Number 3, Austin's default theme from Here Comes the Pain, which was removed. Number 4, Kane's Slow Chemical theme, that's already in, don't worry, which already came in 2002. Number 5, Kane's half-mast Titantron from early 2003. Number 6, more trunk variations for Hair Rock, SmackDown Shut Your Mouth version, and for Here Comes the Pain. I also assume that Taker will have his signature bandana playable. Thanks a bunch. Okay, this is a super easy question. Yes to all of those. I think I already showed off that Taker had the bandana. I had that done like sometime last year. So don't worry, that's already done. Tons of attires for everyone else and correct music, not to worry. Carl Dixon asks, did you ever work out why SmackDown Just Bring It was the only game to show your creator wrestler in the creator moveset editor preview? Are you able to bring that feature to other games instead of the green man used for your moves? Just Bring It was the only game to set up a chair normally, like Raven's drop toe hold onto a chair. Are you able to implement these animations into other games? Funny, I'm still looking into the chair animation. I think that can be possible for SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, but no higher. And then when it comes to the creator moveset, why doesn't it load sort of your creator superstar model, and then later even the models of the superstars? It was just to save load times. I don't think you can change that, because that's why sort of it literally redirects to the green and red men when you're in creator moveset in subsequent games to save on load time. So for example, you know, if you played Just Bring It or played SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, even when you load in a regular superstar, there will be like a brief couple of seconds of now loading. They wanted to eradicate that entirely, so loading up the green and red man were the solutions to this. Therefore, they take a lot less time to load, and you're almost in there instantaneously. Maito YT asks, if you plan on doing both Xbox 360 and PS2 versions of SmackDown vs. Raw 2007's Definitive Edition, which one will you do first, or are you going to release them both at the same time? Also, since these two versions are somewhat different in terms of file structure and such, will there be any content on the PS2 SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 that will not be on the 360 version? Or are you going to work your way around things so that both versions have an equal amount of content? Right, so initially I was going to try and be insane and have a simultaneous release for both. Unfortunately, the reality of one person doing a simultaneous release of two things on completely different platforms, not so great. So I think I'm going to put the PS2 version out a few weeks before the 360 version, just because the PS2 version is the most accessible, and I think that's the one most wanted, even though I'm a huge fan of that 360 version. And I'm trying to keep the content the same. In fact, I did toy with the idea of both versions being completely different, so then you had sort of things on the PS2 version that won't be in the 360, and they were like two different versions of 07. But ultimately, I changed my mind on that just because I thought accessibility, there are going to be some people that don't necessarily or can't necessarily play the 360 version through emulation, or because they don't have a modded 360. So there might be things there that they're like, oh, I don't have this, and then, you know, that leads to issues, right? So I kind of thought, okay, we'll keep it as close as possible. There may be some differences, but not too many. So okay, in that final update, you'll have Titantrons, you have Lesnar, you have Maven. That update should be out mid next year. We have the full attire / DLC packs that'll be coming out in December, and then, you know, obviously I have to check support, because since version 1 I keep updating, because it's playable on so many different types of hardware, and it's so demanding on some hardware that emulation doesn't work as well as it would for sort of the lesser games like Shut Your Mouth or Here Comes the Pain. So when we get to the final build, it'll have all those things, and you will have some extra themes like for World Life Cena and for Hollywood Rock. Romello Robinson asks, for SmackDown vs. Raw 2007's Definitive Edition for Xbox 360, will you have the pay-per-view themes in the menu lobby like you did for SmackDown vs. Raw 2006 Definitive Edition? And will SmackDown vs. Raw 2007's Definitive Edition have the camera angle facing the title arena as an option for the 360? I've not thought about classic camera for 2007 yet. SmackDown vs. Raw will have it though. And as far as the menus, yes. SmackDown vs. Raw 2006's Definitive Edition, as I said, I think has set a precedent for what I want the editions to be moving forward. So a lot of what is there sort of at the core level, like that year's pay-per-view themes and things like that, are going to carry over into 2007, and you'll have that year's themes and whatnot. So yeah, absolutely. Yarden asks, does your early copy of the 360 version of SmackDown vs. Raw 2008 contain Chris Benoit? And is there any promotional art videos in the early copies of SmackDown vs. Raw PS2 and 360 that include him, like select screen renders or videos of him talking? I don't know about promotional art or videos. At the time, early promotional stuff that was press only for preview purposes was like Cena with the green khaki shorts. I think Lashley, Undertaker, Triple H, and Mysterio. Those were the people on the preview. No, it wasn't. Sorry, it wasn't Undertaker. It was Jeff Hardy. That was the earlier stuff, and then later they added Chris Masters in the blue pants, I think it was, to that. But yes, I do have the build with Chris Benoit there. But nobody has their renders yet. Only like I think 4 people have renders. But like as I've said before, Benoit's model, just like Triple H, just like Undertaker, and just like a few other people that were in SmackDown vs. Raw 2007, those models are just ports of their character models from those games. And I think it's just because they spent such a lot of time. When you look at SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 and 2008 on the next-gen platforms at the time, the models were really, really great. So I think it was just we have to add a whole bunch of new characters on the roster, and they didn't have time to sort of update certain things. So some things they just reused. I mean, even Rey Mysterio, it was super last minute that he got that black attire that he has, because in the early builds of 2008, he has the white attire and the red attire from 2006 and 2007. So yeah, so no new attire for Rey till like right at the end. As far as season mode goes, I think we've started to discover that season mode is, when they start doing stuff for season, it is midway through development. I think Benoit would have been pulled by that point. And lastly, Hugo and Italio Gamer both asked relatively the same question. Did you ever work the more recent UK independents such as WCPW? And will you ever wrestle again? Or what are your plans for the future? Well, with those recent promotions, weren't they like post 2010? Like, so I first broke my neck in 2010. So I haven't done anything physical like that in, 10 years now. But yeah, so I don't know when those things started. I want to say things like WCPW was like, what, 2013, 2014? Something like that. I do remember, because I remember when the Performance Center opened up, I went through like a brief window of being bitter about it, because it looked like something I always wanted. I if you watch my interview with Gimme a Hell Yeah, and we spoke about my wrestling career for a little bit, and I always hated going to wrestling school and it looking like a joke and a dump, and people there doing suck it signs and assing off, really. I took training very seriously. I took being an athlete very, very seriously. This is the most I've never trained in my life, because obviously I'm waiting on neck surgery and have been, since last August. I haven't been able to lift weights. When I say last August, I mean August 2019, right? So, yeah, from the time I was 12 till last year, I'd been working out 5 days a week religiously. With the exception of the odd injury here and there. So I was big in wrestling being serious and being treated like a sport, with entertainment elements rather than, an embarrassing joke. And the Performance Center looked like everything I wanted it to be, right? It was everything I wanted when I was, 18? And it looked like, there's multiple rings, there's a proper gym. It looks like people are doing things seriously to be serious, professional athletes. Irrespective of what you think of WWE TV, I'm just saying the facility itself looked like something I always wanted, instead of me having to compromise and go to something like Buckets of Blood, where you sort of learn a hybrid of things. I'm going off the rails a bit here. Okay, so before I broke my neck, I was still at a crossroads with wrestling at the time. While I was wrestling, and when I started wrestling, I'd stopped watching it, and was pretty convinced that if you, as a performer, if you consume and watch bad wrestling, all you do is pick up bad habits as a performer. So you have to keep watching what made you love it and think of it in such high regard in the first place. So what you pick up is only good habits. So yeah, but even before, I was sort of at a real crossroads as to, do I still want to wrestle or do I want to fight? Because wrestling was no longer what I wanted it to be. The titles weren't the same. The whole environment wasn't the same. It was, I didn't get into wrestling to be a child's entertainer and do goofy things. And that wasn't what I wanted in wrestling. As I've made perfectly clear, old WWF, it was not for me as a kid. I thought it was hokey and garbage. And, I prefer the more serious NWA, WCW stuff. And then when they switched and Hogan and all them went over there, I switched to WWF. So, yeah, I mean, I still watch WWF, but, that was not when, if you watch my interview with Hell Yeah, I go over what made me want to wrestle and things like that, and it was very much, an Austin and a Rock, not a Hogan and a Warrior. But saying that, I do love wrestling, especially when I feel done right. Wrestling is amazing. So I would love any opportunity to work in wrestling, and even any opportunity to work in video games. But the reality is before my parent actually got ill, at that point in time, I had written a movie and was in the process of getting that picked up. And I was about halfway through writing a TV show. So after I get my surgery, which I need to do, and I need to build back up and do stuff, I'll think about wrestling at some point. But I'm far more interested in getting back to those things and getting my movie picked up, getting my TV series picked up, and seeing where those things go. And after that, God willing, it does well, I'd probably re-sign up for my party, the Labour Party. And once the paid time limit is up, I'd run for office. And, probably this is something I super regret not doing in 2017, because I'd been a paid member for about a year and change, maybe 2 years and change at that point. And loads of people were telling me to stand and run for either a councillor spot or an MP spot that was open. And I really wanted to, but unfortunately that was when my parent took a real turn, and he was gone within a year of that. So I didn't do it. And now I'm, fast forward, 4 years from that, and my battery died. So as I charge it, I'm gonna try and finish this up quickly. I'll say, 4 years later, I'm not a member of the party currently, thus I cannot run even on a local level, which outside of independent status goes nowhere. And this is why whenever people abroad reach out to me and we talk politics, I really try and hit home how grateful you have to be to have an open primary system. Regardless if you're left, right, or whatever your politics, go outside, get some names on a clipboard, stand, be the change you want to see implemented in government if you don't like your elected official. Over here, you have to be a paid member of a party normally for over a year, uninterrupted, before you can even think of running. So this is how they manage to keep the status quo and effectively block out a lot of the new and progressive ideas and agendas, by making it harder for the young, the well-meaning, the poor, and all with an interest to contribute to help move the country forward. Instead, they're able to run the narrative that they continually do, which is be grateful we're not the opposition, you're lucky, and what we're offering is good enough, which it's not. So if there are ways to circumvent that to a degree in your area, appreciate that, get involved in the process. Change doesn't happen without someone bringing the idea of change to the table. And ultimately, I see this as the path I go down in the next 5 or so years. Anyways, until next time, guys, if you stuck with me this far, thank you so much for watching. Please, please, please hit that like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already. Share the video, maybe someone will like it. If you can support me on Patreon, please do at patreon.com/ScottJay. Until next time, have a amazing Thanksgiving, as good as you can have. Please take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you guys next time.